welcome back to another episode of the Gameday Workers podcast. I'm Barry Beal, founder and editor of GameDayWorkers.com. It's the new blog, podcast, and job board dedicated to part-time game day staff and to the professionals who hire them and manage them. You can head over to GameDayWorkers.com and click on the job board link at the top of the page there. And you can post a game day job, or you can also post your resume if you are looking for a game day job. Any purchase of a job posting or a resume posting can come with 50% off for a limited time if you use the coupon code LAUNCH, LAUNCH, coupon code LAUNCH for 50% off your game day job posting or your resume posting. This week's guest is Kristen Lewandowski, who is the director of ticket and premium seating sales and retention for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as a side note, she's also a personal friend of mine, and she has been for 15 years now, I think. So we were actually in college, and we met doing tours as a tour guides at Heinz Field. So I'm curious to see if Kristen has any great memories about giving tours, or if that job played any role in her moving forward and moving up and eventually coming back to the role she has now in the Steelers front office. I know Kristen also manages Game Day Workers, so I'm curious to see her perspective on hiring and managing game day workers. And I'm also interested to hear from Kristen what her thoughts are on working for her favorite team. So she's a huge Steelers fan from Pittsburgh. She's also worked for the Penguins and the Pirates. So she's been working for teams that she's a fan of for a good portion of her professional career. So when we come back, Kristen Lewandowski of the Pittsburgh Steelers will be here to join us on the Game Day Workers podcast. So on the first two podcasts, I welcome friends who I met through working in athletics. And today's guest is basically the exact opposite. We were friends first, and we both ended up with careers in the sports world. Kristen Lewandowski is the director of ticket and premium seating sales and retention for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we are old college friends from the University of Pittsburgh. So Kristen, my first hard-hitting question for you, are we emotionally recovered from the Steelers' playoff loss to the Browns?
I mean, to start the season 11-0, there was so much excitement around the team, and, losing 5 of your last 6 games certainly isn't how you want to end the season. But I think when we just look back at, everything that we faced throughout the year, starting, when COVID hit in March, I think we have, as a staff, particularly on the sales and marketing side, just a ton to look back on and be really proud of, and know that we are going to hopefully set ourselves up for a successful 2021. And we can't control what happens on the football field. Obviously, it stings when it ended the way that it did, but I think nothing but good things to come for next season. So we're taking the positive outlook for sure.
And you mentioned that obviously your position is completely unrelated to what happens on the field. So let's go into your job here. And it's an extremely long title. I wrote it down here. The Director of Ticket and Premium Seating Sales and Retention. So how would you describe your current position?
Yeah, so agreed. It's a little bit of a long title, but I think it pretty well states what I do, which is I'm charged with overseeing the sale and retention of both our premium seating inventory and our ticketing inventory. So, really, if you have a ticket to a game, likely my department has touched it in some way. So everything from luxury suites to a bleacher seat. We also have hospitality packages that we've been able to put together premium food and beverage paired with a ticket, really an all-inclusive experience. Those are something that we've launched within the last 5 years. And, my day-to-day role, everything from, networking with clients and building those relationships, to overseeing the pricing strategy for tickets and premium and quite a bit in between.
So, and I'm sure your job has certain things in the office versus what you do on game days. So can take me through, maybe not a whole week in the office, but maybe, on a typical day, what exactly would you be doing?
Oh gosh. So, this season has looked quite a bit different than a typical year. There were, I remember kind of to go back and set the scene a little bit. We had our 2 preseason home games canceled. Those were not played at all. We started the season with no fans in attendance. And we continue to hold out hope that we would be able to bring our fans into the stadium. Our stadium operations team really worked hard to make the stadium a safe place for our fans, obviously making sure that we were following all of the protocols set by the NFL, but also set by, local and state regulations. And we were ready that when we brought our fans into the stadium, we knew it would be a safe environment for them, and they would feel that from the moment they arrived on campus. So, this year was interesting because I remember it was the Monday before we were playing the Philadelphia Eagles at home. That Monday, we still weren't sure if we were going to be able to have fans on Sunday. The call came late Monday night that we were approved for 7,500 total people in the building. So Tuesday, we had to turn around and sell those seats. We had 5 days from the time we found out we could have fans till we were actually bringing them into the stadium. So kind of a long-winded answer, but unfortunately this year, my day-to-day was really a lot of juking and just kind of, a lot of reacting to the situation that was happening around us. The situation, whether or not we could have fans, changed a couple of times throughout the year. We actually, unfortunately, ended the regular season and the postseason with no fans in attendance. And that's my core function of my job, is making sure that the stadium is full. So this year I was really challenged with, it wasn't necessarily about maximizing revenue, because how could we when we couldn't even have people in the stadium? So that changed quite a bit this season.
Now, as a fellow Steeler fan myself, you hear the story that the Steelers have a waiting list that's so many years long for season tickets. So to me, or somebody else who doesn't know anything about what you do, I say, well, Kristen, there's an unlimited number of people who want to come to a Steelers game, but your position, from what it sounds like, is about maximizing revenue and maximizing the experience for the people who are in the stadium. Is that somewhat close?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. We do have a waiting list. We're very fortunate that we have a season ticket waiting list. So any seats that do come back to the team, either because they're not renewed or, unlicensed seats that have to be returned to the team when the current season ticket holder no longer wants them, we go to our waiting list to sell those seats. But you hear it all the time. It's less expensive to retain your current clients. I also just think it's a better experience if you can, I'll take our suites, for example. Many of our luxury suite owners have been with us since the stadium opened. which is, really says a lot about the relationships that we were able to create long before I got there in 2014. But we want to keep our current clients. When inventory turns over, on the ticket side, we do have a wait list that we sell to. But on the premium side, it's not like any other sales job where we have to cold call, we have to prospect, we have to always be networking and looking for our next client, because something like a luxury suite in our market, there's not a never ending pool of buyers for that type of inventory. So, again, prospecting and sales is very much still a part of what I do day to day, in addition to overseeing our staff on the premium side that sells as well. And on the ticket sales side, our focus there is really providing excellent customer service and making sure that we retain our season ticket holders and make sure that they have a great experience along the way.
And that experience obviously extends to game days when they're allowed to be in the stadium, which hopefully this coming season we can have full stadiums, but you never know. But I'm sure you're planning as if it's going to go off, like a normal season. And, in terms of that experience, I know you do have some management responsibilities over game day staff, and that is what our website does and what our podcast does. We talk directly to game day workers. So what is your role in managing game staff, and what is it you're looking for in a game day staff member?
Yeah. So the game day staff that I oversee directly impact our season ticket holder and our fan experience. So it's generally an entry level position, and they assist with everything from customer service on the phone lines and via email to season ticket holders that can't access their mobile ticket, or have trouble transferring it, or anything under the sun. Just a little bit of, we want to make sure that we're providing as best as we can some hand holding for our season ticket holders on game day. The other function of my staff on game day is the game day experiences. We have a couple of different experiences where season ticket holders and fans at large can participate. We have a giant, terrible towel that unrolls between the 30-yard lines. Those are all season ticket holders that participate in that. My staff helps with that, as well as there's a post-game opportunity on the field where fans can go down and just take 15 minutes after the game to experience what it's like to be down on the grass and take photos with their families. And the staff that I oversee on game day does that type of thing. Admittedly, I'm not the one, directly overseeing them. It's one of my staff members, but I am involved in the interview and hiring process of those game day staff members. And as I mentioned, it's entry level. So generally what I'm looking for, somebody who's courteous and helpful, that's first and foremost, because when we're talking about customer service and face-to-face with our fans, you have to have a desire to want to make their experience great. And that's the number one, that's the non-starter. So, and I would also say, it's probably a little bit cliche, but just somebody who's willing to learn, willing to help out in any way that they can. I just think initiative is something that, that's something that I really look for. And again, an entry-level position, if you show initiative and you're courteous, sometimes that's all you need just to kind of get a foot in the door.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, because getting a foot in the door is the most important thing, I think, because it could be with a job that you honestly don't have much interest in, or it turns out that it's not what you end up wanting to do, but the connections you make and the people you meet, that is way more valuable than the actual job that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. And I think I'm a really good example of that, where I grew up about 15 minutes outside of where the Steelers host their training camp in Latrobe, PA, or where they did when I was in college. And I had a part-time 3-week position there. And it was with that role, I was able to meet a couple of folks, network, stay in touch. And I was able to secure an internship in the Steelers TV department and scoreboard about a year later. And it just grew from there. Admittedly, I haven't been with the Steelers consistently since 2007. As I mentioned, I started full-time there in 2014. So I did kind of have a couple of experiences elsewhere in sports. I was in the inside sales department at the Pittsburgh Pirates is really where I started my sports career and kind of cut my teeth a little bit in sales. From there, I went over to the Pittsburgh Penguins in a partnership and activation role. And ironically realized I really enjoyed and really missed sales. And I left sports altogether for about 2 years. I had an outside sales position, working out of my car, literally driving up to small businesses and knocking on their door and trying to sell them a website or search engine marketing or optimization. And I was able to show some good success in that position. And, when I'm asked for career advice for people, students looking to get into the sports industry, I always tell them, don't be afraid to, obviously you need to network and grow your network within sports, but don't be afraid to step out of sports because an experience that you have, a skill set that you can learn might be able to translate, likely will be able to translate to sports and show that you can be successful, in something else. And I think that can go a long way. Again, me being a good example of that.
And one more thing that I wanted to touch on in terms of your day-to-day responsibility actually on game day that may pertain to people who are younger and, they see a lifelong Steelers fan working for the Steelers. You're there at the games, but you're not sitting in the stands watching the game, cheering for the team, right? I mean, there's probably a good portion of the game that you're either not seeing or not being able to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do have the Steelers app on my phone, of course, and I do get the score updates throughout the game. So I am aware of the score, but sometimes I'll look up and I won't know how we ended up with 14 points on the board. Because for me on game day, I'm, again, this year being the exception, I'm in suites, talking to our clients and getting that FaceTime with them. I'm in the stadium. I'm helping with ticketing issues when I can. So game day for me looks like a lot of different things depending on the day, but you're absolutely right. I think it's great if you have a passion for sports and want to be in the sports industry, but you probably have to accept that you might just have to record the game and watch it when you get home, because otherwise you might not get to see it because you're doing your job on game day. That's what you're there to do. For me anyways, my position is all about making it a great game day for our fans. And unfortunately that means I'm usually not watching very much of what's happening on the field.
Well, that's DVR is great for that. So it's always funny though, because people, I mean, even, for my job is usually like, I'm sort of paying attention to the game, whether I'm doing stats or PA announcing or something like that, so I'm actually sort of paying attention, but there are times in my job where I'm doing something else and I may miss 5 or 6 minutes of a football game where I'm like, honestly, I don't watch as much of the game as people think. And I'm probably supposed to, so, I mean, things always come up where you're not a fan and it's a completely different mindset whenever you're there working, because the event is going on and there are so many things around it that you don't realize if you're not involved in that world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So, and I wanted, you brought this up already too, that you spent time with all three major teams in the city of Pittsburgh, the Pirates, the Penguins, and the Steelers. Um, and they were at different points in your career. But can you maybe just sort of go through each team and maybe what the differences are, not with the team so much, but what was your goal when you were trying to sell Pirates tickets? Obviously, many more dates, and with seats to fill, versus what you did with the Penguins and then what you do with the Steelers.
Sure. So the inside sales position with the Pirates, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with what an inside sales position is, but cold calling, that was it. 100 phone calls a day. Admittedly, I didn't hit 100 every day. But I did hit my goals, and that allowed me to be promoted there from a part-time inside sales position to a full-time ticket retention account executive role. And that's when I was given a book of business, a book of season ticket holders that I was charged with retaining every year. I also had a new business goal that I had to sell a certain amount of new business as on top of that. And I love that job. It's funny because I don't think too many people grow up thinking, I want to be a salesperson. I want to end up in sales. But Barry, this from us being close friends in college, but I wanted to be a sports reporter. That's kind of where I started. And that, I thought if I can work for the Pirates, hey, that's pretty cool. And, my path kind of led me obviously to where I am today, but I didn't grow up saying like, yeah, I want to be in sales. I want to sell tickets. But what that job taught me is I really loved it. Which was quite a surprise. And I think what made me gravitate towards sales as much as I did and as I do is I don't think of it as sales. I think of it as building relationships. And I think it's, I tell my staff members, if you're picking up the phone and making a cold call, you got to be excited about the product. And if you are, that comes through, and the person on the other line is going to get excited about it too. And they're not always going to buy, but maybe it'll lead to a relationship, and maybe maybe they will buy another day, maybe not today, but maybe a day in the future. And I think that's why I was able to be successful at the Pirates is, I just really focused on relationship building. So from there, I went to, I felt like I had a baseline in sales, in sports, obviously, but there's so much more to the business that I wanted to learn and I wanted to grow in. And I just didn't think that continuing on a sales track would quite get me there. So moved over to the Penguins in a corporate partnership activation position, which the best way to describe that for those who don't know is there was a sales team who would sell the sponsorships. There's an activation team who takes those contracts and makes sure that they are fulfilled. And that's the side I was on. I was on the contract fulfillment. So everything from hospitality to radio and TV ads to, anything that was in signage. So that's what I did at the Penguins. I was there for about 2 years. So 2 years at the Pirates, 2 years at the Penguins. And that's when I left sports, had that outside sales position, 2 years there. And I think it's because of the success I was able to show in that outside sales position that I was given a serious look for the Steelers. Showing success, being able to sell websites to small business owners. If I could be successful in that type of sales role, it could translate to, selling premium inventory for the Steelers.
And it gave you the confidence to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. When you drive around in your car with your laptop and literally just walk up to a small business and knock on the door, I mean, you're interrupting their day. You're trying to build a relationship on the spot. And the thing is you don't have a phone to hide behind. You're face to face. And I think that gave me more confidence as a salesperson, to know that I could sell something, literally face to face and door to door. I think I really learned a lot in that role. And that's why I do tell, college students who ask me, it's, stepping outside of sports and having a position, maybe that isn't necessarily your long-term career path. It's not a bad thing. If anything, it's just going to help you get better in the long run.
So not only just maybe taking a job outside of sports, Kristen, but also maybe a job outside of your comfort zone within sports, just outside of your comfort zone in general. So I don't know about you, but for me, and this is where we actually met, but we were tour guides together at Heinz Field.
Yeah.
And you started, I think, a couple of years after I did. So I was already the wily veteran, to come and train all the newbies like you. But I'll tell you what, the first time I gave a tour, and I even had another tour guide with me, I was scared to death because it was not only public speaking, but you were walking backwards and having to spew these facts about the stadium to kids who either were asking questions that you didn't know the answer to because they were like things you would never think of, or B, they were watching the airplanes fly over and weren't paying attention to you at all. So that was kind of a chaotic job. But do you remember anything about your time as a tour guide?
Oh gosh, that's right. Yeah. And I think that honestly probably goes back to, I can't believe I forgot about our time as tour guides, but because it was obviously very, very near and dear. But that was another way I was able to just kind of stick around and keep my face present at Heinz Field and with the Steelers, not only at training camp, but taking that tour guide job. And that was so much fun. It definitely got me out of my comfort zone because, I mean, you had everything from groups of second graders who, you really had to tailor which facts you were giving about Heinz Field based on your audience. And believe it or not, I think that probably helped me in my sales career because you do need to tailor, what you're focusing on based on the needs and the desires of the person that you're selling to. Somebody who's buying a suite for their family is, I'm going to approach that proposal a lot different than I'm going to approach one to, a local law firm. So that tour guide job, now that I think back on it, probably gave me, helped me hone my sales skills a little bit too. But the other thing you had to be careful of if you gave a wrong fact, you might have incorrect information circling all around Western PA because the people leave your tour and go spread it around. So you had to be on point with that, but that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a fun summer job, and I might have brought this up once before to another guest on the podcast. But I mean, a lot of my friends were, they were bartenders, they were waitresses, and people would ask me, well, what is your summer job while you're in college? And I said, oh, I'm a tour guide at Heinz Field. I get to go to the stadium every day and go into the locker room and go into the suites. And people looked at me like, how did you come across that job? But and again, it's not really a game day job, but I mean, if anybody has a chance to be a tour guide at a stadium, it is a great way to meet a lot of people in the front office. We met everybody when we were there, I think. And, it was a great way to sort of get your foot in the door and just, kind of be around that environment.
And aside from that, it was just a lot of fun. Not only the people that we met, obviously the other tour guides, you and I are a great example. We've been friends.
Yep.
Oh, I hate to put a number of years to it. 16.
Yeah, I was going to say 15, but you're probably more accurate than I am. I just was guessing around 15.
Yeah, but also the people that come on your tours, and couldn't agree more, Barry. I think if anybody listening has the chance to be a tour guide at a ballpark or stadium, go for it, because it's a lot of fun, and you will be nervous as hell. I was on my first day, my first couple of weeks, but it's worth it. It's fun.
Well, that's Kristen Lewandowski. She turned a part-time job at Steelers training camp and also a part-time job giving tours to second graders into becoming the director of ticket and premium seating sales and retention for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kristen, you know I love you. Thank you so much for doing this, and it was really good talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun, and I'm excited to hear your other episodes and see what other guests you bring on. So best of luck with the podcast.
Thank you very much. And we'll be right back on the Game Day Workers podcast. Closing out another edition of the weekly Game Day Workers podcast. Special thanks to Kristen Lewandowski for joining us. Kristen is a perfect example of what can happen when you work very hard and you do so with a smile on your face and a friendly disposition. So I've seen how far, she's come since we were in college together to now having this position with the Steelers. And hopefully it's inspirational for lots of people out there that you can turn, part-time positions with your favorite team into a full-time job with that team. And of course, I'm biased. She's been a great friend to me for a long, long time now. So I just know that her perspective and her experience and her history would be very beneficial to this audience. Head on over to GameDayWorkers.com for the blog, past editions of this podcast, and also the job board. If you are looking to fill a position, hopefully you will consider posting it with us at Game Day Workers. And if you are looking to find a position, hopefully you'll check out those job listings or consider posting your resume. If you do decide to post your resume or post your job, if you use the coupon code LAUNCH, it will be 50% off as we look to get the job board rolling here in the early days of Game Day Workers. So that's it for me, Barry Beal, and we'll see you next week with another edition of the Game Day Workers podcast.